Hey crafty friends, Gina here from My Little Scrapbook Store's design team. I'm here for the National Scrapbooking Day Hop. Today I'm going to teach you some techniques using Distress Crayons. I'm going to make 2 cards for you, and I'll talk about my challenge during the video. So don't forget to visit all of the designers to see what they made, and visit the Facebook group to enter your challenges. Hope you enjoy. Thanks! So if you're not familiar with Distress Crayons, I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. These are a heavily pigmented crayon that have almost like a lipstick consistency. They come in all of the distress colors. They wind up on the bottom, and you just twist that. You see that it'll come out at the other end, and it's a very creamy texture. Like I said, very similar to a lipstick. It reacts with water, so you can actually paint with these. You can smush them down on a palette and use a brush with water and paint with them just like a watercolor. So for today's card, we're actually going to paint right onto a stamp with them and then make a card with it. The colors I'm working with are Wild Honey, Brushed Corduroy, and Rustic Wilderness. I'm going to use them on this leaf stamp from Sizzix and 49 and Market. So I've got that set up on my Misty with just some white cardstock. And I'm going to use these crayons to color directly on the stamp. So I'm using the Rustic Wilderness down on the spine of the leaf, or the stem, and on each branch off of these leaves and at the base of the leaves. So I'm just going to color that right on there. Add some in here. Next I'm going in with some brushed corduroy. And then some Wild Honey, just for some highlights. And now I'm just going to spray some water on this so that pigment loosens up and moves around. And then I'm going to stamp it onto my paper. So it gives a very watercolor effect. Now, I want a little bit more color, so I'm just going to go right back in on my wet stamp. I'm going to go with the Rustic Wilderness, and I'm going to add more. And now that color is going to move around a little more freely because the stamp is wet. And I want to darken up that stem also. In fact, I think I'm going to grab a darker green and add some more pigment to that stem. Let's try Mowed Lawn and see how that looks. I'm just going to go right on the stem and on the base of those leaves. I'm not going to add any more water. And I'm going to close that right back over my paper. And smooth that out. Now I have this beautiful watercolor effect. I'm going to let that dry, and then we're going to stamp the outline. My leaves are dry, and the Distress Crayons have just blended together to make this beautiful watercolor effect. So now I want to stamp the outline. I'm going to use Vintage Photo. I want it to be darker to outline this image. And this time I'm going to spray this first. And then I'm going to go a little heavy-handed on this one because I want a nice dark outline. And this could have also been done with a brown ink, but since I had my Distress crayons out and I love the watercolor effect, I'm going to just go ahead and use my Distress crayon. So I'm just coloring all the raised parts of the stamp. And we have to see, this might need a second pass, but we'll see how it looks. Okay. Oh, that looks great. I love that. I think I'm gonna go one more time just to see what happens. Maybe I'll just put a little bit more pigment in the middle part on the stem and not the whole thing. Just see if I can build that color up a little bit. I can even go in with another color just to add some interest. So I'm going to grab Wild Honey again, and I'm going to go around the tips of the leaves. So that color's built up really nice. Little bubbling there. I'm not concerned about that. That's all going to dry. So I am going to wait for this to dry and then go ahead and die cut it, and we'll put our card together. My leaves are die cut. I stamped a Happy Father's Day sentiment on here, and this is a piece of white cardstock that I ran through an embossing folder to get this texture on it. So I have all the pieces ready to put my card together. I just want to add a little bit of depth to this, so I'm going to use frayed burlap, and I'm just going to very lightly go around the edges. Now, I mean, right now when you put that on at first, it just kind of looks sort of scribblish and scratchy. I only want just a very little bit of pigment, and I'm going to take a water brush. And I'm just going to go ahead and just blend that all out just to get some color around the edges. And I'm just moving that around right off the edges of the paper just to kind of frame this background piece. So the pigment around the edges of my embossed piece have dried, and I'm just going to take a little bit of antique linen on a sponge dauber, blender, whatever you call these things, and I'm just going to go around the edges just to finish that off a little bit. I'm sticking very light with this one because I really want those watercolor leaves to pop. And we're ready to build our card. I'm going to glue this down to my card base. This is a A2 card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then the piece that I embossed on is cut slightly smaller at 4 by 5 1/4. I'm just laying my acrylic block on there, and I want to get some, let me set this aside so that dries. I want to get some foam adhesive to put on here. Okay, got my big roll. Just cutting off some pieces for these leaves. That one came out a little big, so I'll put that on here. can put our card together. I think we're gonna, let's see. No, I think I like it the other way. I'm gonna put the leaf off this way. Now I already know that this card is not going to get mailed, so I'm not too concerned with the thickness or anything sticking up from it. Okay, so I'm going to put that right there. And then I think I'm just going to grab some gems, maybe just some gold, pearls, something simple, just to add a little bit of interest. That will fill up that space nice right there. I'm going to do 3 different sizes. And that completes card number 1. This next technique is a very simple, easy to do technique, but it comes out absolutely beautiful. This is a piece of dark brown cardstock that I ran through an embossing folder that had daisies on it. Now, this is brown, but I will tell you that this technique works beautifully with black cardstock, navy blue, really any dark color. When you use the Distress Crayons on a dark cardstock, it really makes the pigment pop. So I'm going to start with my white Distress Crayon, and I'm going to twist that up. So this is actually Picket Fence, and I'm going to color right on top of all those leaves. Just a quick color to apply that pigment, and then I'm going to take my finger and I'm just going to rub it to smooth it all out. And I'm really like not being specific or, you know, just being kind of carefree, just to lay that pigment down wherever the leaves are and then smoothing it out. And you can see how that color just pops and makes the card come to life. And you can go as heavy or as light as you want. You can layer if you want. Now, when you first place the pigment down, it is movable. I don't want to say wet because it's not really wet, but it's creamy. But that will dry. So you have a little bit of time once you place the pigment down to move it. However, once that is dry, you can still, it will still react with water. And if I wanted this like brighter, then I could leave it. I don't have to smooth it out. I could leave it and just give it a little bit of extra drying time. But I wanted it a little bit more subtle. And also depending on how hard or gentle you press when you rub with your finger, that will affect how bright or subtle the pigment looks on the dark cardstock. This is a really fun technique, and like I said, I've done Halloween cards with it on black cardstock, and I've used some of the metallic Distress Crayons because aside from these crayons coming in all of the distress colors, there's also metallics and pearlized ones. I can show you those in a minute. So that makes my flowers pop off. So let me show you real quick. There is a silver and a gold, and then there is several sets of these Distress crayons that you can see they're like pearlized metallic. There's a lot of different colors of these as well. So next I'm going to do my centers. I'm going to start with mustard seed and go kind of around the edges of the center. And then I'm going to take squeezed lemonade and I'm going to go right down in the middle. My Distress crayons have definitely been used and abused. As you can see, little flakes coming off of them. And then I'm going to just go in with my finger and blend those. And I think I'm just going to go back in with a little more white. Going to make sure to clean off my finger in between colors so I don't cross-contaminate. And I'm going to just do a little more white out from the centers. And that I'm going to leave. I'm not going to go in and blend that out. Just to try and make those centers of the flowers nice and bright. Also covering up some of the yellow shades that have blended out a little bit. So that's really it for this card. I have another A2 size white card base. I'm going to go ahead and glue this on. This is cut the same as the first card we did. The card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and the brown cardstock with the daisies embossed on it is 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm left with that white border, whoops, around the edges. And then I'm going to put my acrylic block right on top there. And while that sets, this one is going to be a Mother's Day card. So I stamped Love You Mom. And I'm going to get my foam adhesive and put it on the back of that. And I am using Barely Art Glue, so if you use that, you know that sets pretty quickly. And let's see, so this card really can go horizontal. We can do it diagonal and put that right in the center, but I don't think I want to block that flower. So I think I'm going to do that right down there. I'm going to put a little bit of adhesive on here just to make sure it sticks with all that pigment and the raised texture from the embossing folder. Set that right there. And I'll put a block over that to make that set. And then a little bit of bling, of course. This time I think I might use some glitter. These are ombre glitter drops. Sparkle and Shine. Whoops. Use a couple of these. So if you are hopping along with My Little Scrapbook Store for National Scrapbooking Day, don't forget to check out all of the other designers' social medias. You can find everything listed in the Facebook group. And each designer has done either an Instagram post or a YouTube video, and each designer has a challenge. So for my challenge, use mixed media on either a card or a layout. So that could be anything. It could be Distress Crayons, it could be sprays, inks, paints, whatever you choose, on a scrapbook layout or a card. And I hope you enjoyed this. This completes the second card. Very simple, fun technique that really has a wow pop factor to it. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you'll be so kind. If this is your first visit to my YouTube channel, please like and subscribe. And if it's your first time shopping at My Little Scrapbook Store, you can use code GINAREF, that's GINAREF, and receive 10% off your entire first purchase. Thanks for hopping along with us, and we'll see you soon.